Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. I've cut all the pieces, roughly laid stuff out just so I could get everything counted, make sure I had all the parts, kind of knew how things were going to fit together. For example, these are little doublers for these two plates here and here. These are going to be wing mounting screw locations for the aluminum struts that are going to come up off the fuselage. We definitely have a bit of dihedral at both wings, so you can easily tell that by taking the outermost wing rib that is going to have a carbon fiber, rod passing through it, and comparing the holes. So that would be this outermost, and it passes through those two, and this is the innermost location, and you can see the difference in the hole location. So that's our going to be our dihedral there. So the outer rib should probably be aligned with a little bit of an angle so things join up well. They don't give any direction on that, so exactly how you do that and how much is kind of an eyeball thing. Let's see, just like on the first wing, we have some small doublers that are going to backstop the innermost hole for the or outermost hole where the carbon fiber rod passes through. In the case of let's see here, yeah, there's these here. Same kind of setup with doublers, and same kind of setup at the tail, at the wing tips. Pop that out. Let's see, what else? The tips pretty much go to the same as the other one. You've got the interlocking outer piece made of thick balsa, like so. We've got a couple of different, it's nice that they kind of have everything prepped. I got to clean off these little nubs here where these were cut free, so that these lay flat. The way I'm going to build this, I'm going to start by, it's going to be pretty much like the first one. I'm going to pin down the lower spar and the rear spar, and then start laying up ribs. I'll do my doublers. I'll put certain things in place that need to be keyed into ribs, like the servo mount plate and the little servo cover. Those are going to need to be sandwiched in between two ribs, so you want to like glue one rib in place, put that piece in place, snug the other rib up against it, get a good fit, and then glue the rest of it. Likewise with this, same thing with these intersections with the carbon rods, or the carbon tubes, excuse me. Once that's all done, do the rest of the ribs. Once all the ribs are done, do the leading edge carbon fiber rods, and then put in all of those W29 half ribs. This this wing is a little more complicated. First there's going to be this piece here, that's at base level. And there's a little doubler here that's going to help with shaping. And this piece is going to go above. It's going to key just like this rib keys into this, like that. This one is going to be on top, and you want to make sure that that hole is to the inside, because this allows you to drop the head of a bolt down in there and be able to screw it down. It also kind of hides it, because the wing bolt will be in here. That hole may need to be enlarged, since you're going to be screwing this down to a to the fuselage. Remember, the fuselage has those doublers, so if you're using a wood screw, or even if you tap this, you don't want to be screwing through this. You're going to need to enlarge that hole to the size of the bolt so the bolt can pass through it. Let me just set these aside. I'm a little cramped for space right now. I got a lot of projects going simultaneously. Good thing I'm not building a much larger wing. So, you know, here's an option for you also. If you were so inclined, you could leave out the inner ring ribs and wait until you had the wing put together, then use them and the carbon rods, use the connecting tube, pin the wing in place, get your fixed dihedral, and then assemble it all together as a single piece. Because these wings really aren't very large. I can't imagine that someone is going to go to the field and bolt all 3 wings onto this plane. I mean, even with the fuselage, you know, this is a small plane. It's maybe 3 feet by, I would say 2.5 feet. I mean, it's a suitcase. It's just not that big, and having to disassemble all that stuff, reassemble it. Bear in mind that, you know, even if you tap these, over time they're going to loosen. It's wood. The more you run a screw in and out of it, the more you disassemble and reassemble this plane, the weaker it's going to get. So totally up to you. You could even, you know, I would still bolt them on in case something breaks. It would make things easier to repair. But building them as 2 separate sections, I think it would be just, you know, better to build these wings as single pieces. Don't do the inner ribs. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do that because I think it'll be a better, stronger kit in the end. You know, I'm going to go ahead, set things up. I'll leave these off. So I'll just have, you know, the carbon rod coming through these 2 ribs here. And I'll have, you know, the spar and everything just sticking out here. And I'll take the tube that joins them and I'm not sure if this is a carbon rod or a wooden dowel, have that ready to go, and then glue all of these together at the same time as I'm putting the wing together and doing the dihedral. And that way it's a single piece, because let's see here, I don't know the can't remember the wingspan offhand. Okay, so 29 inches. You really want to make a stack of 6 14-inch wings. I just don't see that. I don't see that that's practical. I'll leave the bottom wing as 2 pieces since I've already built it that way. I might glue it together at some point, but for now I'm just going to leave it as 2 since I've built it this way. And you know, once I screw this plane together, it's not coming apart unless something breaks and I need to disassemble it and fix things. But, you know, can you imagine having a stack of these like this? You know, I think it's nice that they give you the option, but I think it's overkill trying to make this plane disassemble into this teeny stack of parts, especially when they don't give you an option to take the tail feathers off the fuselage. You know, that becomes the biggest single item there when you've got all these extra parts on here, plus a nose cone and a propeller. So, you know, at that point, why not, you know, the tail section is going to come out to here, the cowl comes out to here, so the fuselage itself assembled is almost as big as the largest of the 3 wings. you know, why make it the wings as two pieces? I just don't see it. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm diverting from the plan here. It's up to you. You build your plane as you wish. I will demonstrate how I've done this. You've seen how there's not going to be any difference in the overall assembly than what you would do if you built this as a two-piece wing. You watched me do the first one, so these upper wings are exactly the same. There's no difference in the way they're going to connect together. So there you go. Decision made. So I'm going to start, I'm going to move these two piles aside. I'm going to pin these, the bottom spar in place. I'm going to pin this rear edge in place. The aileron can be assembled separately. I may leave that for last. Just take the aileron parts and move them aside and deal with those after I've done the wing. And then this one, so I'll be building these two at the same time, but I'm going to go ahead and pin down the rear here, the lower spars for left and right, lower spars here, left and right, lower trailing edges, left and right, and then start framing things up. So I'll drop in as I go and give you more information, any more interesting things I come across. Again, I've said this before, this kit's very nice. I like the way everything keys together. I think it's really nice the way they've done this part with the aileron, where you've got your trailing edge here and these ribs just plug in. One thing I'm not sure about, because I haven't, one of these is going to have to be filed down. I haven't seen these A pieces yet. I need to pull out the wood section that's got those on it and trim those out. But it looks at the moment like this piece and this trailing edge here, or actually it's the leading edge of the aileron. So you have your aileron, and this piece is going to it's going to glue down onto this edge right here. And it may be with these down because the A pieces may plug in, or they may lay over the top like ribs. I'm not sure. I'll come across that. I'll cover that when we get there. In any event, you have this on here and you have this trailing edge. They're both, straight up and down. There's no angle. So one of these is going to need to be sanded a bit to create an angle for the aileron to be able to move properly. So that's something that's going to need to be addressed. And I so far haven't seen anything in the images about that, but we'll deal with that down the road. So for the moment, I'm just going to collect these parts here, these little A parts that were part of one of the sheets that I cut out. And set those aside for later. So now I can focus on the body of the wings. I thought some of you who are newer builders or just getting started might be curious about some of the ways that you can do this. This is how I'm doing it. I started by pinning down the lower half of the main spar. Now, as with the bottom wing, the end piece does not have any cutouts. So even though it looks like that spar goes out to the edge here, it doesn't. It starts one thickness in. So pin it with this piece there, and you can tell that that is correct by the way the slots for the ribs line up on the plans. If this was meant to go further through, number one, this notch would be longer, and number two, these would be over, one thickness of wood so that this could slide over. It would also be longer. So start by pinning that down to the plan straight along. Most of these, I'm Xing them over. Some of them are able to just press the push pin all the way down and let the 90 degree at the top of the T-pin clamp it. Again, the paper can be a little wavy. Sometimes it tries to push the wood up, and I wanted to make sure it's flat. Okay, so once that was pinned down, I took this wing rib and this wing rib, and I pinned them in place, and then slid this trailing edge all the way against them flush. And as you can see, there's a little bit of space. Now, drawings are not always 100%. You cannot count on them, but they are an excellent guide, and that's what you want to use them as. You want to use them as a guide, something to make sure things are square, things are going in straight lines, things of that nature, and then let the fit of the parts dictate exact positioning. That's why I started with this spar, because that is the main structure of the wing, is the spar. So that gives me positioning for everything else. So now these have been pinned down. I haven't glued anything yet. In the case of this wing versus this one, there's some structure over here, so I wanted to address positioning on that as well. I took this piece here, keyed it in place, and pinned it down. Now you'll notice there's this line here. That's going to be a piece of sheeting that will go in place later. So I just used a T-pin through the screw hole that will eventually be used for mounting this wing, and just pushed it all the way down through the foam to hold this in position. Then I did my doubler over here, and I put these two spars in place. Again, I'm not going to be putting the innermost spars in place. I'm going to keep these aside until I'm ready to glue the two wing halves together. So those aren't going to be used right now. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these wooden, just balsa wood pieces, not plywood, ribs, and I'm going to go ahead, put them in place one at a time, and work my way down the wing. And once I have all of those in place, I'll do my doublers for this rib here. This rib's a little complex because it's got this cutaway. So this is going to assemble a little differently. And it might be best to assemble this on the layup here, because let me just show you. And then we need to position this one all the way rearward, and that's going to leave a slot for an aluminum, it may be wood, I'm not sure, but it's it's going to connect this wing to the lower wing and the top wing. That's why, unlike the bottom one and unlike the top one, it can be has one single piece. Let me find that so I can show you. Actually, that doesn't. It's yeah, it does. Okay, so you see how this one is, you have a single piece because it can connect over here. This one is open top and bottom, so it has to be two separate pieces. That way, the piece of wood that's going to go through this wing from the bottom wing to the top wing can pass through. So when you're doing this, you want to make sure to position this inner piece as far rearward as possible, because you don't want to diminish the size of that aperture. That's going to be very important. If that is shrunken, you'll have to sand the strut down, reduce the amount of the size of the strut, and potentially weaken it. So bear that in mind as you're putting stuff together. Then at this point, I don't even need to put in these wooden ones, right? I mean, these balsa ones. I'm sorry, I keep saying wooden ones. This is not a bad time right here to just glue this here, 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 here. Go ahead and get this little bit of framework glued. Then start putting things in, because the fact that these are plywood here and here and here gives a lot of solidity to this structure. So putting the balsa ones in, they slide in nice and easy. They fit nice and tight, and it's not a problem. So going ahead and gluing these ahead of time is just fine, and that's probably what I may end up doing. I've gotten ahead on this side and already put those in place, the balsa ones. Let's see, 5 of them, and in this case, I may just go ahead, glue these, and then continue. These are already in place, so I might as well just glue them. It's not an issue. So just wanted to kind of give you a little more base instruction, because I don't record all the steps I do. And I'm not sure that's really helpful. I think it would be really boring even if I sped the video up a lot for you to watch hours and hours and hours of me just, lining up little pieces of balsa, pinning things down. I mean, it does take a good bit of time, because I'm trying to be very careful with these things. When you try to do things fast, that's when I find mistakes are made, and sometimes they're not recoverable. Just wanted to show you a little something back here. Once you have gotten these 2 ribs, the lower curved piece, and capped it off with this piece here, the next is to do this piece. And it doesn't seem to fit the first time you try it. Okay, don't try to force it. Turn it upside down, right side up, flip it front to back or left to right, and you will find that it slides right in, just like that. So it should, if you've done everything else correctly, you should not have to force this piece. It's a matter of orienting it correctly, and because the sizes, the distance, like from here to here versus here to here versus this, and there's differences from top piece to bottom piece, so there is a specific orientation for this piece. And if you're, there's only so many positions to try, and it will slide right in. Same was true of this side. Once I figured out that there was something not quite right, I was like, oh, was it cut bad? Did I position it wrong? Nope. It's just a matter of orienting it, and it slides right in. So just a little thing. Okay, 1/2 still anchored to the board, the other half free. Both of these ribs with their doublers, test fitted but off. One of these tubes needed a little bit of sanding. I actually sanded both of them a teeny bit just to make sure things fit proper. Put in the inner tube, slid the wings together, propped up one side to take the stress off, get the dihedral angle right, and then glue everything together. And as you can see, it is a thing of beauty. Everything looks perfect. You will notice when you put these together, if you're doing it my way or if you're doing this as 2 pieces, that these ribs. There, you can't see as well on the first wing, the lower wing, because the only thing you have to judge the dihedral is the spars, and they're not as accurate as these plywood pieces. When this box is built up and you start putting that last spar in place, and if you, regardless of how you're doing this, I recommend leaving this, not spar, these wing ribs off to the last part and anchor those on, because with this in place, you're going to get the dihedral angle for this piece that you didn't see as easy on the bottom piece. Once you slide this in firm and it's flush here and flush below, you do have a little bit of angle to it. You got a little angle up here, it's just different, but that is that's going to give you the right angle and give you two pieces that fit together real pretty like that, even if you don't glue them together. So that's how I recommend you do it. Okay, there are a pair of doublers for these two locations here. These are where the struts coming from the fuselage are going to attach to the top wing. They're both marked, one's marked 22-1, one's marked 21-1. The 22-1 is easy to spot. It's going to just slide right there and fit in. The 22-1 is not so difficult, it's just a little different, and you need to orient it properly. There is a correct direction. Because it's shorter than the other one because there's a doubler on the front side here for the carbon rod or carbon tube. So take a push pin and slide it on through, and then use that to orient to make sure that you have this correctly positioned front to back, and then just slide it down into position, and then you can tack glue it from there. But doing it this way, make sure that you've got the holes lined up, and you could always drill another hole if you use it in the wrong direction. It's not a critical deal, but it is best to do it the correct way. So like I said, just push a pin through it, use the pin to orient the hole with the hole on the next level, slide it down, glue it in place, done. Okay, I've been putting this top wing together, and so far everything is going as one would expect. Nothing really difficult. These pieces here are going to go in later. There's a reason. Don't throw this outer ring away. It looks like it might be scrap. It's definitely a part. Here's what it's going to do. Okay, this piece right here with the 4 holes is a mounting frame for the servo. I can't show you easily because it comes in from below. This is going to come up from underneath and mount, screw into these holes, and the servo will be attached here. That's why there's this slot here. That's for the servo arm to be able to swing forward and back. There's a couple posts, and those are for mounting the servo, because since the servo will be on its side, the screws are going to come in from the side. So this allows you to remove the servo to do service adjustments, things of that nature. Now, covering would otherwise be a problem because this deck here is recessed into the wing. It's probably a little hard to see, but there is space underneath here. You see, this is raised. So that's what this is for. Now, that's also what this is for. Okay, so that you can cover the wing and not have some divoted hole. This will glue from below where this is. Okay, and that's why you have that. You see? So this frame will gusset this deck against the ribs and provide more structure. And then this piece with the servo will be fitted into place from below. So save this until the wing is assembled. When the wing is assembled, you glue this, from the underside here. I'll go over this again when I get to that point. But I just wanted to make sure you guys don't toss this. It is an important part. It's going to make for a nicely covered wing surface. So basically this creates an aperture for the servo tray that is level with the bottom surface of the wing. Hope that all makes sense. But you'll understand. If you're not sure, just wait till the video where I'm actually gluing that in place, and you will see. If it may be in this video, it depends on how the footage gets cut. There's a lot of footage here, so it's not all going to be in one video. Finishing off the wings, we have some parts that are W33. These are thin ply. These are for this portion of the wing here. They basically just wrap around. As you can see, this one is not glued in yet. I'll be doing that shortly. The easiest way to do this is to get yourself a thin piece of plastic that you can just cover your fingertips with and hold this up against the wood a bit at a time and drip glue in from the opposite side here. Make sure you have the bottom aligned properly, and then just work your way along. Now they give you 3 of these, so if you bust one, you've got an extra. They actually have a handful of extra parts in this kit, and it's kind of arbitrary in some cases. For example, our ailerons. I went ahead and put these together. Sorry I didn't go into this. There wasn't much to cover. I'll just give you the basics. I went ahead and pinned the large flat section down to the plans. I cut out these little A1s and A2s. As you can see, we have some extras. I think they give extras of these because they're pretty small. Maybe some people were breaking them as they were getting them out, trying to pop them out instead of cutting them, and snapped them, and had some complaints, and so they just decided to throw some extras, or they just had extra space on the balsa cutouts, and they said, what the hell, we'll fill a few extras. In any event, I went ahead and there are 3 unique ones here. Those are I think it's 3, 5, and 6. And then you have a bunch of A2s and a bunch of A1s. I glued all those down. Once those were down, then I put this piece of wood in, and it became a lot clearer that the wood goes on its side, not upright. And I pushed it against the edges of these, so there's a little bit of an overhang here, like a fingernail thickness of wood. This is going to need to get shaved one way or another to angle this for aileron movement. Now I'm not sure how I'm going to do that yet. Here's what I'm thinking. Okay, there's 3 main choices. You could bevel it this way, and then you end up with a hinge at the bottom edge where the shaving or the sanding is to make this thing have space to fold up against the flat edge of the wing, vertical flat edge. And I don't like that idea because the main airflow, you want to be as undisturbed as possible. Another option is to kind of do this in a V, where you shave from the upper edge and the bottom edge, so you kind of end up with a point in the middle, and that way you can rock up and down. And then the last alternative is to shave this way, One moment. I wanted to make sure I had this in camera. To shave this way, and that way you have an almost flat surface. Might even do it with a monocoat style hinge. If any of you have seen some of my other videos, you know that I like monocoat hinges for certain things. And that would make for a completely smooth upper surface and airflow. The cutaway would allow the aileron to go down, and of course it would have free movement up as far as you needed it to go. Definitely put in this little block here. It's a small piece. I forget the number of it offhand. This is going to provide more gluing surface for the horn. I'm definitely going to go with the stock horns. They provide some nice small carbon fiber horns, and they just plug in. I will probably just use CA on these. That should work just fine. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.